The 2025 Cincinnati Reds season is over, so it's time to look ahead. Let's take a look at the 2026 Cincinnati Reds and what the roster may look like for Nick Krall and Terry Francona. Welcome in, everybody, to Chatterbox Reds. I'm Craig Sandlin, joined in by Nick Kirby. Nick, how are we doing tonight? Or today, depending on when you're watching.
Doing good. As we're recording this last day, there'll be more than 2 baseball games in a day, so that's a little sad, but also have enjoyed a little Arizona Fall League action. Craig on Wednesday, Cam Collier on base 3 times, 444 on base percentage for Mr. Collier so far down in the Arizona Fall League.
Nick, he's the last piece of the puzzle to our $500 bet with Trace. So hope he keeps it up and parlays it straight into 2026. And maybe we see Cam Collier in the big leagues before the end of the year. But look, there's a lot of decisions that this Reds team has to make. Obviously, Nick and I already did an episode of Chatterbox Reds looking at this offseason calendar, but just a quick recap for you in case you missed that episode. Let's take a look at what that looks like for the Reds. Free agency begins 5 days after the World Series ends, sometimes between November 2nd and November 6th. Key free agents for the Cincinnati Reds. These are unrestricted free agents. Starting pitcher Nick Martinez, starting pitcher Zach Littell, relief pitcher Emilio Pagán, first baseman / DH / whatever you want to call him, Miguel Andujar, and starting pitcher Wade Miley. Now, contract option decisions have to be made around that same time period, November 6th through the 9th, that date yet to be finalized. But 3 players stand out with the Cincinnati Reds that have player options in 2026 or mutual or club options. Austin Hayes with the most expensive of those options, $12 million mutual option for Hayes. Scott Barlow, a $6.5 million club option. And then Brent Suter, a $3 million club option. And each of those obviously have their own prospective buyout, but we won't get into all those details in this episode. Make sure you go watch the last one and you'll have all of our input on what those decisions may look like. The deadline to protect Rule 5 eligible players falls somewhere around November 19th. Nick went out on a limb and said that he believes Hector Rodriguez and Edwin Arroyo are both locks to be protected from the Rule 5 draft. He also thinks that there's probably just going to be room on the 40-man roster to protect 1 or 2 more. Kind of depends on how this offseason goes and what their needs are going to be in terms of who that might be, but certainly a room to protect a couple more. And then the non-tender deadline is November 21st. Those are for arbitration-eligible players. If the Reds aren't interested in bringing those players back, Nick and I both agree that Santiago Espinal and Ian Gibaut are likely to be non-tendered this offseason. And then other players like Sam Moll, Gavin Lux also have an opportunity to potentially be non-tendered, but both of those would at least carry some level of surprise. So with that being said, let's take a look really quick at the 2025 position player depth chart for the Cincinnati Reds. Again, this is as it stands right now going into 2026 based on who's retained and who's not retained, keeping into account the non-tenders that we just talked about, options that'll be declined, and others. So let's start in the outfield, where Nick believes that Noelvi Marte will be your everyday right fielder and TJ Friedl will be in center field. He believes that Will Benson and Blake Dunn will platoon in left field. Across the infield, of course, Ke'Bryan Hayes, Elly De La Cruz, Matt McLain, and Nick has Sal Stewart penciled in as his starting first baseman. Tyler Stevenson, of course, behind the dish. Gavin Lux and Spencer Steer serve as your utility / DH / wherever needed players. And then your bench. Will Benson and Blake Dunn, obviously, whoever's not starting. Gavin Lux or Spencer Steer, whoever's not starting. And then Jose Trevino. And Nick says CES makes the opening day roster in 2026. There's obviously some key players at AAA. Nick believes guys like Hector Rodriguez, Reese Hines, Tyler Callahan, and Edwin Arroyo all have a chance to be seen at the major league level in 2026, depending on how everything goes. Now, Nick, I'm on the record that I think Sal Stewart is your first baseman of the future. I think this offseason is going to be key for him. The rest of the infield is set. There's zero conversation about what happens at second base, shortstop, and third base. But if you're the Cincinnati Reds, what do you need to see from Sal Stewart to be ready to pencil him in as your starting first baseman come 2026 opening day?
Just that he did some work in this offseason and continues to look like he's progressing. He doesn't have to be a perfect first baseman defensively on opening day 2026. But I saw enough there in that month to believe that he has the tools and the capability to man that position. It's one of the easiest positions defensively. I mean, he should be able to do it. There's a reason you put guys like that look like me at first base, Rowdy Tellez and fellas like that. So yeah, I think Sal Stewart, Charity, first baseman. Craig, I think a lot of people are going to look at this depth chart and they're going to be jarred. And obviously, like, this is not what we want the finished product to be. We need the Reds to add some players, but this is kind of where I think it stands right now. For me, let me start off with what I think are the biggest positives. Okay. Right field, Noelvi Marte only played 90 games last year. Even if he regresses a little bit offensively, which I don't really think there's any necessarily reason to believe that, getting him for a full season, you hope, makes a pretty big advantage, a pretty big boost in right field. I think people underestimate the value of Ke'Bryan Hayes over 162 games. Jeimer Candelario and Santiago Espinal, I think, combined for nearly minus a full win, like a negative win. Ke'Bryan Hayes, I think at his absolute worst, is like a 1.5 win player, probably a 2-win player. I don't have to squint too hard to think he makes a little bit of adjustments, plays in a more hitter-friendly ballpark, that he could be a 3-win player at third base. But even if he's only that 2-win player, that Craig, that's a 3-win swing. That's a pretty big deal, I think. Elly De La Cruz was on pace for a 6-7 win season. Obviously, August and September were nightmares. But I don't think there's any reason to believe that that's the real version of Elly De La Cruz. So I think you're expecting at least a 5-win player. You're at least expecting to be worth maybe one more win than he was last year. Matt McLain was terrible at times, still hit 15 home runs, still was worth a 1.5. And then I think Sal Stewart at first base kind of rounds out an infield, Craig, that I think maybe a lot of people are going to be excited about. But I tell you, offensively and defensively, I think that's a pretty solid infield. Now, for me, obviously, I'm a Benson believer. I get that people aren't. I think if you move him out of the starting lineup, that's probably better. And then ultimately, he probably ends up getting back in there because of injuries. TJ Friedel is kind of proved, I think, last year that he's an everyday player. The real thing is it's hard to see both Gavin Lux and Spencer Steer being kept at nearly $5 million price tags. Lux seems like the one, to me, Craig, that's probably the most likely to the Reds try to move. But the thing that scares me about Gavin Lux is the guy's in a contract year, and there's something about contract years with guys. And Gavin Lux had a weird season because he wasn't bad, but he just wasn't good enough to be a DH. So Craig, let me round it out by this. I look at this roster, and I think a lot of people are going to say, go out and get an everyday left fielder. I'm fine with rolling with Will Benson and maybe Spencer Steer if you moved him out there, a Steer, Benson, platoon, and left. For me, I think you have to go all out, and you have to get a DH. And the name that just screams to me is Kyle Schwarber. And I think a lot of people are going to poo-poo that idea. Oh, the Reds will never sign Kyle Schwarber. I don't know. I saw the projections were maybe $110 million. It's just, how many times are you going to get an opportunity to go out and get maybe the best hitter on the market that actually probably has some interest in coming to Cincinnati, that just absolutely fits what you're looking for, that because he's a little bit older, because he's 32, I think he's going to be 33 next year, his price tag's not going to be as exorbitant as like it's going to be a $300 million contract. For me, that's what it screams to me, is go out and just get that DH, and then you could kind of maybe find some Austin Hayes type pickups to kind of fill out and round out your roster. Schwarber's the name to me that it's clearly screaming and begging for. Guys like Eugenio Suarez, Josh Naylor, I think could fit that bill as well. But man, I just never see an opportunity that would be better for the Reds to go out and make the bold move, suck it up a little bit, spend a little bit more money. How many teams, Craig, in baseball could go out and sign one player for $100 million, and it completely flips the entire narrative with the fan base.
Sure, Nick, but how many times are we going to have this conversation about things that the Reds could do? At some point, we've got to be realistic. And I know that this whole purpose of this show is to try and be realistic. So to try and have some offshoot of the Cincinnati Reds going out and signing Kyle Schwarber to a 4-year, $110 million contract is just unrealistic. They're already going to be playing Jeimer Candelario. There's already uncertainty around a lockout in 2027 and what that could mean for the Cincinnati Reds and beyond. I just find it so unlikely that the Reds are going to expand their payroll to a position where they're going to go out and sign a guy like Kyle Schwarber. I agree with you. It would be great if the Reds went out and found a hitter who could DH for them every single night and could hit lefties and righties, and you wouldn't have to worry about that position at all. Miguel Andujar kind of fit that role for them at the end of 2026, where he was hitting both sides of the plate very well, or both sides of the pitching rubber very well, and he would do it at a discount. The problem was he wasn't bringing the power that obviously Kyle Schwarber would bring, especially in Great American Ballpark. I get that, but Kyle Schwarber is the antithesis of a Cincinnati Reds move. You know better than I. When is the last time the Cincinnati Reds made an offseason signing somewhat of the caliber of Kyle Schwarber?
Well, it wouldn't be it was a current player, but Homer Bailey was 6 years, $105 million. So it was $100 million deal.
But that was a home team discount, right? He was already with the Reds. He was drafted by the Reds. He was brought up by the Reds.
I don't know if it was necessarily a huge discount. I mean, I feel like it was pretty a fair deal, but that was a $100 million deal. I mean, Mike Moustakas was $64 million. I mean, it's $30 million more to go from Mike Moustakas to Kyle Schwarber. Again, I'm the guy here that I understand why you don't go out and you spend these $300 million deals. I can give the Reds somewhat of a pass where I know a lot of this fan base isn't. I'm not giving them a pass for this. They don't deserve a pass for this. This is an opportunity to go out and sign one player that absolutely, completely transforms your roster, fills the biggest need you have. I mean, you're the Reds need this big power increase. I mean, sure, what are you going to do? Try to go sign 3 guys to $8 million deals? Just go get the one guy that probably hits 50 home runs next year and completely flips your offense. And the nice bonus of this is all that bad PR that you constantly get. They would completely flip it. It would be insane how different this fan base would view the Cincinnati Reds if they went out and signed one move. And most teams couldn't dream of this. The New York Yankees, they go out and sign one. Look, let's do the Cubs. They're better. The Cubs go out and sign Kyle Schwarber. Is the fan base gonna be like, okay, what's next? Who we signing next? Who we signing next? Who we signing next? That's not even going to really move the needle for them. For the Reds, I mean, that completely transforms the entire vibe around this team going into 2026. If now is not the time to go sign a $100 million deal, which is not that much in baseball, when is?
Probably never. Probably not in our lifetime. Certainly not in the near-term future, and certainly not before the uncertainty of the 2027 lockout looms. I'm with you and every other Reds fan. I would love to bring home Hamilton's own Kyle Schwarber. I just don't know that that's realistic. And look, there was an article out there today that I shared with you that said that the Reds are a dark horse to land Pete Alonso. My reaction to that is exactly the same as it is to you saying that the Reds are going to go out and sign Kyle Schwarber. Pete Alonso, obviously, the contract's going to be probably even bigger than Kyle Schwarber's is going to be, I would imagine. But
2 years younger, plays first base. Yeah, it's going to be a much... That's the kind of deal I understand that the Reds aren't going to make. I don't understand maybe a 4-year. If someone gives Kyle Schwarber a 6-year deal, okay, I understand it. But if it is what we're expecting, 4 years, $100 million, I'm not giving them an excuse. I'm not giving them an out. And I'm the guy that constantly gives them an out. I'm not giving them an out for this.
Okay, Kyle Schwarber, 32 years old. A 4-year deal would take him to his year 36 as a DH. He risks that decline towards that 35, 36-year-old contract. If somebody offers him 6 years, which again, we have no idea what people are going to offer him. If he gets 5, 6, whatever, he's going to take the security at that point versus a shorter contract with the Reds, just given his age. But I agree with you. But Nick, I want to bring up what I actually see as an even bigger point of concern for me than DH. And I agree with you 100%. This Reds team needs power. and hopefully they can do that in the outfield or a DH position. But where I see a significant hole that I feel like the Reds are going to prioritize this offseason, it's infield depth. And Edwin Arroyo obviously has been talked about as the future infield, middle infielder of depth or whatever it may be. Gavin Lux is certainly not it. Spencer Steer is not going to play middle infield if something were to happen there. I almost feel like the Reds are going to want to have some sort of insurance plan if Matt McLain doesn't live up to expectations after riding with him for an entire season in 2025. You look at the AAA depth at the middle infield position, and you're talking about guys like Francisco Urbaez and Levi Jordan and Trey Faltine, and it just leaves so much to be desired. Edwin Arroyo obviously was at AA this past year, so the idea of him going to AAA and then to the pros in 2026, he'd have to have a great start of the year to expect to see him at the professional or the major league level in 2026. I think, and you kind of mentioned it, it's hard to see Spencer Steer and Gavin Lux both on this team in 2026 because they both kind of fit that utility role without really having a set position. I could foresee them potentially trading one of those and a minor league piece to somebody to try and get a more stable utility man that they feel could plug in more regularly to be able to give guys like Elly De La Cruz days off and allow him to DH more often, to be able to plug in when Matt McLain needs a day off. Even somebody that maybe could play first base for Sal Stewart or third base for Key Brian Hayes on days off. Obviously, you have CES on your opening day roster for 2026, but I really think that infield depth is something that the Reds are going to want to prioritize. And for an organization that really seems to be trending towards wanting to prioritize defense, they don't have that anywhere right now in this organization ready to play in the major league level should an injury or something else happen during spring training. I would expect them to try and address that role at some point this offseason, whoever that may be. I know I said on the last podcast, Luis Arraez feels like such a Red signing. I know he plays primarily first base. He's played some second base. He doesn't fit that defensive bill, but he certainly fits the contact bill that the Cincinnati Reds are prioritizing so far. Is there somebody, I know you're not super up to date on all of the free agent middle infielders and utility men, but anybody that stands out to you as somebody who may fit that bill that would fit the Reds budget in terms of a backup for an infield utility role?
I mean, not really anyone that I think would be better than just taking Gavin Lux at $5 million. I mean, good luck signing someone. So maybe they do end up keeping Lux. I hope if they do keep Lux, they use him in the right role. I hope he is not penciled in as a starter, because I don't think he was good enough. I think that maybe you could have a situation with Gavin Lux where you say, all right, we're not going to throw you in left field anymore. You are only going to play second base and DH. And if he only works at second base, maybe you can get back to that level where his metrics weren't that bad at second base. I think that would be the situation where I think Gavin Lux would make the most sense. I do think people are sleeping on Edwin Arroyo. I know he finished the year at AA. I know he got off to a really slow start, but he was coming off a major shoulder injury, missed all of 2024. I mean, you remember, it was a long time ago. You might remember it was actually in 2024 in spring training. He looked incredible in spring training. He looked like he was a big leaguer then, and then he got hurt right at the end of spring training, and it was just a slow coming back. I think Edwin Arroyo, I think it is possible that if there was an injury, Edwin Arroyo's on the opening day roster as like your Santiago Espinal. And to be completely honest, I think Edwin Arroyo could outplay Santiago Espinal. What Santiago Espinal did for the Reds in 2025 and 2026. I don't think he's that bad. He's sort of 345 on base percentage at AA. Got better as the year went on. Has that obviously that fielding ability that the Reds are looking for. But CES is a big key as well, because CES is your third base insurance. And they already talked about their CES's plan is first base and third base. So that's a big piece of that as well. Because I don't think you want to be moving Sal Stewart from first base to third base and back and forth. I think you just want to plan him at first base. But I tell you what, CES, I didn't think was that bad at third base. I don't think you want him there over 162 games. But if Brian Hayes has his back flare up and needs a couple weeks off, I think putting CES out there for a couple weeks, I think there's a potential there. So I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's as dire. I'm more interested in either going out and trying to get a legitimate outfielder, and more important than anything is just a absolute bona fide DH that you don't have to squint, that is just going to absolutely rake. And again, Suarez and Naylor, I think, would also kind of fit the bill there as well. But that's, I think, the bare minimum that this team has to do this offseason.
I don't want to get too deep into these conversations because we'll do a standalone free agent talk podcast in the near future. But just because I brought it up, a couple names, I guess, that could become available this offseason that may fit the bill for the Reds. If you have an immediate reaction to any of these, great. If you don't, that's okay. Willie Castro is an unrestricted free agent this year. He was a 3.5 WAR player this past year in a down year. He's not going to hit for power, but he's going to hit 250 to 260 probably and get on base for you, and he can play almost anywhere. The expectation is Ozzie Albies is probably has his option picked up by the Braves. It's only $7 million. He was a 2.5 WAR player this past year. I don't think he actually hits the wire. The other name is Luis Renifo. He's only 29, 1.5 WAR player. He becomes available. And then some more expensive players that I don't expect to be viable options, but guys like Bo Bichette becomes available. Gleyber Torres is a 4.5 WAR player. He was listed as a dark horse for the Cincinnati Reds in the same article that I mentioned earlier. And then Brandon Lau also has a club option for 2026 that could become available. If we're being honest, I don't know that any of those are perfect fits for what I'm talking about, but do any of those stand out to you as options for depth versus what you have now with Steer or Lux?
Not really. I don't think I would be going out to get any of those guys. I believe in Matt McLain. If you don't believe in Matt McLain, then sure, I think a lot of those guys would make sense, the ones that can play second base. But I think you have to roll the dice, and I'm rolling the dice with Matt McLain, who, again, wasn't great, but still had 15 home runs, played great defense, was worth the 1.5. I think you have to put some faith that he can bounce back. For me, it's for me, I'd rather them. I don't think that this overall depth chart is as dire as I think a lot of people do. I think it just needs that one massive bat. I really do. I think that I just think that's the piece they're missing. Is just that the guy that can just take a lot of pressure off. You have a guy like Schwarber, or even Suarez, or even Naylor, if they're going right. The thing that scares me about Suarez and Naylor is I think that their floor is significantly lower than Schwarber. Like Kyle Schwarber, for him to have a bad 2026, something would have to go really, really wrong. For Suarez to have a bad 2026, it could happen. It's not that far-fetched. Naylor, same thing. That's what I think they need. And because the thing that I love is the depth chart that I was projecting, everyone's a plus defender. Everyone. Maybe not Tyler Stevenson, but we're hoping ABS will get him at least close. But he's still, every single person there, outside of maybe South, but like South Street's first base, like Benson, Friedel, Marte, I think is going to be a plus defender by the end of the year. Hayes, we know he is. I believe in Elly De La Cruz. I will die on that hill. I have a whole other soapbox about everyone using -2 outs above average that I'll save for another time, that they're completely butchering that usage of it. But yeah, I think there's a ton of value there defensively. You just need that one big bopper to bring it all together.
Yeah, so if I'm the Reds front office, I'm adding 3 pieces this offseason. One is that infield depth that I just talked about. That may not be a big signing. It may be somebody that we just look at and say, okay, that's a nice depth piece. The second one is a DH that you just mentioned. I'm on board with that. I just don't know that it'll be Kyle Schwarber. And just being blunt, Nick, I'm going out and I'm signing another outfielder. I love what I saw out of Noelvi Marte, but I didn't love the regression that I started to see out of TJ Friedel defensively. And I don't have 100% confidence yet in Will Benson and Blake Dunn being my platoon. Now, I have more confidence, if I'm being honest, in Will Benson today than I do in Blake Dunn, right? So if I can go out and get a right-handed outfield bat, which is the same conversation we had last offseason, I'm doing that. Now, what those available names look like, that's where it becomes a little bit difficult, right? Guys like Lourdes Gurriel Jr. can opt out of their contract. Tyler O'Neill can opt out of his contract. Jesse Winker is an unrestricted free agent. Michael Conforto is an unrestricted free agent. Trent Grisham is expected to be a free agent. Cedric Mullins. So there are names that could become available in 2026. Mike Yastrzemski is another name that kind of seems to fit what the Reds like to do. But he's a 4.1 WAR player, might be a little bit more expensive than what I would expect the Reds to go out and sign. I know that you're going to disagree with me, but I think going into 2026 with Blake Dunn penciled in as your opening day right-handed platoon starter is a death knell. And
hold on. Remember, I'm moving Spencer Steer to left field as my platoon partner with Will Benson when I go get my DH. This was just the depth chart as it stood right now before any moves are made. So my play, I still think Blake. I actually think I'd put Blake Dunn on the roster, and I'd actually have him platooning with TJ Friedl. As I don't believe in Friedl against lefties, but but Steer would be moving out to left field in my scenario. This was just to fill the roster as it stands right now. Does that make you feel a little bit better?
One way or another, we're filling a hole, right? And it's not a knock against Blake Dunn. It's just I'm not ready to go into 2026 with utmost confidence and ready to put him in that position. Now, I would love to get to spring training and him absolutely blow us out of the water and continue to play like he did in 2025 in Louisville, right? He got very limited opportunities in Cincinnati during his play there. I'm not holding that against him. He looked really good at AAA. And if he comes into spring and continues to look good, I'm probably giving him another chance in 2026 on the opening day roster, but I'm not ready to make him my everyday guy. Now, that could mean that I bring an older player in on a minor league deal. And if it doesn't work out and Blake Dunn shows me that he can be that guy, we just let the vet go. But I'm not rolling with that being my only option is Spencer Steer or Blake Dunn.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I agree that that's fair for sure. Yeah, and man, another thing that sucks about this is this just makes the way that this season was managed more frustrating because I wish we had a more clearly defined idea of what Will Benson is, because we should know right now. I mean, we should have known he should got a chance to play every day in August and September, or every day against right-handed pitching. And by the end of the year, we would have been able to say, okay, was the exit velocities and all that, was that real, or was it not? I believe it was real, but I understand the people that don't, but they didn't give him a chance to really prove. And now you're back in the same sort of state of limbo. Because you name off all these free agents, and I'm just like, the best version of Will Benson is better than them. He's a good defender. He runs faster than any of them. And man, we've seen at times this guy could be the NL player of the week. But I understand, as much as it annoys me, I understand the haters out there. I get it. And it just makes what they did the end of the year all the more frustrating, because it just didn't give really enough clarity going into the offseason.
I hope you're not labeling me as a Will Benson hater.
I am not.
Okay. All right. I agree with you. Look, I thought Will Benson deserved more opportunities than he got last year. Here's my concern, Nick, as a fan, not as playing Nick Krall in this dream scenario. My honest concern as a Cincinnati Reds fan is I already saw Terry Francona trade Will Benson away from Cleveland. And then he gets to Cincinnati, and I just watched him basically kick him out of the dugout, even though he was one of, if not the best Reds offensive threats for a good stretch of time period. And all of a sudden he just was nobody on this roster, right? So as a fan, I'm not convinced that Terry Francona is going to give Will Benson a fair shake again in 2026, right? Like, it's just, he's established that Will Benson's not his guy, and it just feels like that's not going to change at this point. I don't want to get into personal stuff. In high school baseball, I was not the head coach's guy. I made one mistake and I sat the bench forever, seemingly forever. It feels like Terry Francona is pulling that same kind of grudge where he found something that Will Benson did that he can punish him for, and he's going to hold on to that grudge for as long as he can. I'd love to be proven wrong and for Will Benson to give a fair shake in 2026 to be your everyday left-handed platoon bat, whether it be left field right field, center field. He can play everywhere. That's the nice part about Will Benson. I'm not ready. I don't believe that Terry Francona is ready to do that, but I would love to see it.
And honestly, if you're not, you should be trading him. I mean, if you're not going to give him a on a shake, you should trade him, because I guarantee you there's a team out there that would give you something. May not be something huge, but there's a team that's gonna be like, hey, you know what? We'll give that guy a chance to play 140 games and kind of see what he can do. But if you're just gonna sit him on the bench for 2 months, then yeah, he has absolutely no value to you.
Now, Nick, there's one part of this Cincinnati Reds roster in 2026 that you and I have already agreed upon is the number one priority in terms of depth. Maybe not the number one position, but certainly one of the top priorities for this Reds front office this offseason, given our expected departures, and that's this Reds bullpen.
There is nothing better than October baseball and grilling out, and I use Omaha Steaks for all my grilling needs. And now, during their early Black Friday sale event, you can get 50% off site-wide, plus an extra 20% off select favorites, and our listeners get $35 off with promo code Chatterbox. It's so great to have steaks, hamburgers, and gourmet hot dogs always in my freezer, ready to go. It's so convenient for me to go online and order. I like the value freezer filler package to stay stocked up. The steaks are perfectly aged, hand-cut, and USDA certified tender. The burgers are mouth-watering and grass-fed, but don't sleep on the gourmet hot dogs. They are seriously the best hot dogs I've ever had. Plus, they also carry chicken, pork, seafood, and fantastic desserts. Save big with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their early Black Friday sale. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code Chatterbox at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com. Promo code Chatterbox at checkout.
You take a look at the Reds bullpen in 2025. We'll start with the starting rotation. Hunter Greene, Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott, Brady Singer, and Zach Littell. Zach Littell expected to be let go and walk in free agency this offseason. From a starting pitching depth and at AAA this year, you had Nick Martinez, who's expected to potentially walk, Wade Miley, who's expected to walk, and you're left with guys like Chase Burns, Chase Petty, who struggled, and Carson Spires. Now, from the starting pitching rotation, we take a look at the bullpen, and that's where it really gets bleak, Nick. From the bullpen, returning or expected to be on the Reds roster in 2026, Tony Santillan, Graham Ashcraft, Connor Phillips, end of list. That's it. Emilio Pagán, Ian Jabot, Sam Moll, Brent Suter, and Scott Barlow, all at risk of being gone in 2026. And if you're Nick Kirby, all projected to be gone. Now you have depth. Obviously, we've seen multiple pitchers be able to be successful for the Reds in 2025. Guys like Zach. Come on, Nick. I'm not done with that slide yet. Dang it. Guys like Zach Maxwell, Luis May, Leon Richardson, Reaver San Martin, Yosver Zulueta, all had certain levels of success in 2025. Guys like Joe LaSorsa, Sam Benchotter, or Randy Wynn. You have Randy Wynn on this list.
I ran out of
Nick.
names. I ran out of names to put. I put that was everyone that pitched this year.
I hear you
on that list.
I hear you. So that's the 2025 pitching depth chart. Now let's take a look at 2026, right? And this is Nick's projection based on the current roster of who could be in the Cincinnati Reds rotation and bullpen. We'll start with the rotation, Nick. I don't think there's as much conversation that needs to be had here, but I think there's a conversation to be had. Nick is projecting Hunter Greene, Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott, Chase Burns, and Brady Singer, with depth at AAA with Brett Lauder, Brandon Williamson, assuming that he's healthy, Chase Petty, Julian Aguiar, assuming that he's healthy, and Carson Spires, who is not expected to be healthy until midway through the season. That rotation, Nick, feels pretty locked in, if we're being honest. If everyone is healthy, I think your rotation is set. Now, The biggest question for me is, does Rhett Lauder go to the Arizona Fall League, do what we hope he can do, come into spring training and show that he's the Rhett Lauder of 2024? Or does he have to earn his way back through a AAA stint and beyond? How the Reds manage those 6, right? That'll be the main question for me. Does one of them move to the bullpen? Do they go with the 6-man rotation? Or does one of them just have to start at AAA? If you're Nick Krall, if you're Terry Francona, what are you doing with that starting pitching depth in 2026?
Well, as always, it often takes care of itself. You always have to start with and preface that. I think that the starting pitching depth is okay. Like, I love 1 through 6. I mean, I think sign me up for 1 through 6 with about anyone. But we know you usually need a lot more than 6 pitchers to survive a full 162-game season, and especially more than 6 pitchers when one of them is Hunter Greene, my guy. He's not made it through a full season yet. Has missed significant time in the last 2 years. Nick Lodolo had his best year in terms of health, but I think there's still plenty of questions there. Andrew Abbott has yet to really be fully effective after August in his career. Rhett Lauder didn't pitch the entire year. And Chase Burns, the Reds kid gloved him all of last season, which I didn't have a problem with, but that's just the reality. That's why I saw people saying, well, Brady Singer, I mean, that's a lot of money, $11 million. The Reds should trade him and save that $11 million for a bat. Brady Singer's the one guy, the only guy that you can actually fully count on to take the ball every 5th day and provide that stability. So I think we talked about on the last show, but yeah, the keeping Brady Singer, the $11 million projection in arbitration, and not even considering trading him, it's not even a thought for me because of the depth. I'd almost rather trade maybe one of the higher upside arms that maybe there's more questions about, like a guy like Nick Lodolo, if the price is absolutely right. If, and I say if, to make sure you're clear there. But yeah, I think that I think the Reds should be looking to bring in at least some quality minor league invites to spring training that are starting pitching options. If not, going out and trying to find another Wade Miley type. The Wade Miley thing didn't work out, but I think it was a good idea by the Reds last year to give them opportunities for more depth because you're going to always need that. So, yeah, I don't think the starting pitching depth is dire, but I don't think it's as comfortable as maybe probably a lot of this fan base believes it is.
Yeah, I'm with you. 1 through 6 seems pretty locked in. I don't think there's a whole lot of question there, but to your point, one of those higher upside arms, whether it's Nick Lodolo, whether it's Andrew Abbott, if you are concerned about his ability to go a full season, he's obviously worn out each of the last couple seasons towards the end. Maybe you don't think that he can get to a point where he can give you 30 plus starts a year consistently at the top of his game. But we're sitting here, he made 29 starts in 2025. So I don't want to discount that by any means, but is that as high as his market is going to be? Like, will Andrew Abbott ever be better? Right. And maybe that's a trade bait opportunity for you for sure. But I agree with you. Beyond that, there's question marks, right? And that's the biggest thing. I think that if everybody was healthy and you came into 2026 with a healthy starting rotation depth, I think you'd be okay, right? You have guys like Brandon Williamson, who has pitched for you in the past and pitched well. You have guys like Julian Aguiar and Carson Spires. Carson Spires pitched pretty well in the starting rotation when he was given opportunities. So I think realistically, if everybody was healthy, you have 7 guys you feel pretty good about, 8 or 9 guys that you were like, all right, if we had to, we'd be okay, but certainly not to a long-term solution. And then after that, it kind of gets difficult.
And don't discount Chase Petty. I think he's the whipping boy right now. He had a very bad season, but he reminds me a lot right now of Brandon Williamson. When the Reds acquired Brandon Williamson, everyone, and myself included, thought this guy was an absolute bust. He was atrocious, but he figured it out, and he ended up having a really good run with the Reds before he got injured. So don't discount Chase Petty. I know Fangraphs still had him like a top 60 prospect, which I think is a little crazy, if I'm being honest. I think it's crazy. But the fact that there's still a publication that still has him ranked that high, don't discount him. I'm not counting on him, but don't discount him, because I think that there's a chance he has to. I mean, the guy has to have a fire lit in him this offseason, and he's still incredibly, incredibly young. So I'm just saying, yes, he should be at the absolute bottom of that depth chart, but don't think that there's no potential for him to provide value for the Reds in 2026. And ultimately, he may get the spring trading, not look good. He may go to AAA in April and not look good. And the Reds may say, you know what? We'll do the same thing we did with Connor Phillips. He certainly has the capability of providing value there, which kind of leads us to the next point, which is the thing that is way more dire than I thought it was before I started putting these lists together.
Yeah, just real quick comment on Brandon Williamson and Chase Petty, since you brought it up. It kind of interesting paths to your point, right? So the difference for me, Nick, is that Brandon Williamson was extremely good at the lower levels, and then as he progressed, he got it was difficult for him at AAA, but then he came back a year later, figured it out, and that's when we really saw that shift, was after he came back.
Was a lot older, though. Went to college. Chase Petty was directly out of high school. He was at those levels at a much higher and more experienced age. I will say that, though.
Sure. Okay. I mean, I guess I'll give that to you. He's 5 years older than Chase Petty. I'm not really sure that it's that much difference, but maybe. Chase Petty in 2024 was great, including limited starts at AAA. And then he came back in 2025 and he was not great. And so that's my difficulty in kind of getting to your level, where we got to figure out what happened, right? Like, how did we go from a guy who had a 1.80 ERA in 2 starts at AAA in 2024 to a guy who had a 6.39 ERA in 26 starts in 2025? And that's the question for Derek Johnson. That's the question for this pitching staff. I have a ton of respect for Derek Johnson and what he's been able to do. So I'm with you. I'm not going to write him off, but I'm not going to count on him for anything in 2026.
Yeah, but I don't think you should count on him. I just think that I still like him at the back end of that depth chart, because I do think he's a guy that has the potential to get to AAA and work on it. And yeah, I mean, just to my last point, Brandon Williamson made his big league debut with the Reds. He was 25, like Chase Petty was 22. So I mean, he's quite a bit behind him in that regard. So yeah, I hope he has a good offseason. I think there's still something left in the tank, and I hope he corrects that.
Yeah. Now, Nick, the one position group that, as you mentioned, is looking quite dire for 2026 is the Reds bullpen. Yes, they're bringing back guys like Tony Santillan and Graham Ashcraft and Connor Phillips, who looked great at the end of the year. But they're also, beyond that, going to have to rely on guys like Zach Maxwell, who they didn't trust down the stretch of 2025. Luis May, who we didn't see at the end of 2025 at the major league level. Sam Maul, who they didn't trust enough to bring back to the major league level. Yasser Zulueta, who we only saw at the major league level maybe one time in 2025. And Leon Richardson. There are other pitchers, obviously, from a depth perspective that we'll keep our eyes on. Jose Franco is a guy we haven't seen at the MLB level yet, but is looked good in 2025. Hunter Parks, TJ Antone, as he comes back from his 3rd Tommy John surgery. Reaver San Martin, Joel Valdez, Jose Acuna, Javi Rivera, and Trevor Kunsel, all as depth pieces that you could be looking for in 2026. Kunsel is currently at the Arizona Fall League, so he'll have a extended opportunity to work on his stuff here at the end of 2025. But this is a Reds bullpen that, if they don't bring back some of those key losses from 2025, Nick, is going to have to do a lot of work in order to get back to the level that we saw them at in 2025.
Yeah, when I started putting this list together, I started thinking, well, maybe that Scott Barlow option, which is basically a net of $5.5 million, because you have to pay him $1 million buyout if you don't. Kind of think there's maybe a real chance that they do just decide to bring him back. And Emilio Pagán, I know there was comments today that he'd love to come back to the Reds. I kind of say, sure. Maybe they actually do make a run at him, just because it is kind of that dire. You do have a lot of starting pitching options of guys that have been starters in the minors that I think could transition to relievers and maybe be fast tracked a little bit towards being effective. Obviously, Brendan Williamson, Chase Petty fit that mold probably a lot faster, but guys like Jose Franco, Jose Acuna, Javi Rivera, both those guys were injured but very talented starting pitchers. Those guys could maybe be transitioned to relievers to kind of fast track and help your bullpen. But yeah, Craig, the Reds bullpen did a really good job in 2025, certainly with kind of the expectations and the amount of resources pumped into it. But the Reds did blow 40 games. Now, some of that was the fact that this offense could never really come back until late in the season. There was just no chance of coming back. And when you can't come back in kind of seesaw games, you're going to naturally blow more games. But I think the MLB average was 35. So it kind of felt like you had your bullpen, your 2025 bullpen. You almost needed to retain that and then still kind of improve that a little bit. So that's where I do think there is a big challenge this offseason. But what makes it different than me saying, well, just go pay Kyle Schwarber, just go pay Josh Naylor. I don't feel the same, Craig, about bullpens. I'm not going out and throwing $15 million as a reliever because it's so easy to just completely throw that down the toilet. I mean, just look at Rodgers last year. He was a $6 million guy that, had incredible career numbers, but relievers are just so volatile. So this is where you have to draft and develop as a small market team to survive. And that's why the Brewers are so good, because they never have a bad bullpen. It doesn't matter if they lose half their team. They never have a bad bullpen. They continue to find ways to do it. So that's going to be a challenge this offseason. It'll be kind of an interesting one to see, A, how much resources they put into it, and then B, how many starters do they maybe try to throw out there into reliever roles.
Yeah, the one thing about relief pitchers is that the market is always flush with options, right? There are always a ton of names that are available. But let me throw one name at you, Nick, that we don't have on this list that's coming from the Reds franchise. Buck Farmer pitched in 25 games for the Reds at AAA in 2025 with a 1.98 ERA. He was a guy that we were pining for to get a chance at the MLB level, to get on that 40-man, to get a chance to get back to the major leagues. Never happened for him. I assume I'm going to get an agreement from you here, but I'm 100% bringing him into spring camp and expecting him to make the major league roster out of camp.
Yeah, I think it would have to be on a minor league invite, but yeah, I would certainly be all about that. And I tell you what, that's the one thing that this organization has probably done the best at and recently is hitting on a method that's not a high success rate. They have picked up guys like Ian Jabot. They've picked up a lot of pitchers off of waivers that have been effective. Fernando Cruz was kind of that nature as well. So there probably has to be a combination of trying to strategically pick up and then also adding a couple more. If it's not Scott Barlow, a Scott Barlow type again, that kind of a mix of that. But yeah, there's going to be some heavy lifting, I think, on this bullpen, on Tony Santillan, Graham Ashcraft, Connor Phillips, and I think Zach Maxwell and Luis May next year. For the Reds to really probably be successful, no matter what they do, they need at least 3 of those guys next season to be well above average big league relievers.
Deep South Commodities is a proud supporter of Chatterbox Reds and our Deep Drive of the Day, and DSC is a leader in renewable commodities for biofuel production, specializing in used cooking oil collection, aggregation and sales, Visit www.deepsouthcommodities.com for more information. Thanks as always to our friends at DSC. And we also want to remind you that you can call or text 988 anytime, day or night. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is a place to get support for anything related to mental health. Whether it's an immediate crisis, simply wanting to find out how to connect with care, or anything in between, it's a 100% confidential, secure, and anonymous way to reach out for help when you don't know where else to turn. To connect, call or text 988 or visit mantherapy.org to get help. It's okay not to be okay.
Here's the question for you, Nick, and we'll get into a couple of names that are available in a minute. But what I want to ask you right now is potentially going to drive the answer of how much money the Cincinnati Reds are going to spend on the bullpen in 2026. Now, here's the question, Nick. Who's your closer?
Well,
are you going, is Tony Santillan your guy and he's your closer going into spring training and it's his job to lose? Are you bringing in competition? Are you letting it ride? Because that's going to drive a big piece of it. If you're bringing someone in to try and compete for a closer role, you're going to have to pay him a little bit. Are you rolling with Tony?
Well, I mean, if we're rolling me personally, I would never roll with the closer. I'm a closer by committee guy. But under the Terry Francona and not just really under most baseball managers today, yeah, Tony Santillan's for sure the closer. And Tony Santillan was like a half a closer at the end of the year. I mean, like they weren't even always going to Emilio Pagán, especially if he wasn't rested. They were going with Tony Santillan. So Santillan kind of almost was a closer at the end of the year. I mean, yeah, you roll with that. You roll with that, and then you look to, because you could probably look to add legitimately probably 3 arms that have some upside to your bullpen for the price of 1 closer, right? So I just don't think it makes sense for the Reds to go out and try to get an actual closer. And if Santillan doesn't work, like Connor Phillips, I mean, what he showed at the end of the year doesn't make me think that that's off the table either. Now, he walks a little too many guys, but he does seem like he was kind of getting that cleaned up at the end of the year.
All right, let's take a look at a couple of names that, again, are going to be on the free agent market, expected to be free agents. Not going to dive too deep into it because we are going to do another show where we dive pretty deep into the free agent market, but a couple of names that the Reds could be interested in reuniting with in 2026. Raisel Iglesias, a free agent. Emilio Pagán, obviously. Jacob Junis, a free agent. Luke Weaver, a free agent. Derek Law, a free agent. Any reunions in the books for you, Nick?
Derek Law still kicking it. Junis is the only one of that group that I think really would make sense to me. I just don't think the Reds are in a spot where it makes sense to pay what Iglesias or Luke Weaver would cost. Derek Law, man, he had a sneaky good year in 2024. Well, that's 2024. Did he even pitch last year in the big leagues? Did he even pitch last year in the big leagues?
I don't know. He's on the list. He's on the list. I'm just telling you.
You're throwing guys out there that had a 13 ERA in AAA. He only pitched 2 innings. He must have been hurt most of the year.
He must have been hurt.
Yeah.
And then a couple of names that former Reds foes that they saw a lot that are expected to be free agents. Ryan Helsley, the former Cardinals closer. Devin Williams, the former Brewers closer who had a rough year in New York with the Yankees, both free agents in 2026. Other names that jump out to me, some may or may not be options, but Kenley Jansen expected to be a free agent. Kirby Yates, David Robertson, Danny Colomb, who was a name that some people threw around at the trade deadline for the Reds to go out and get, and then I think he got hurt in the second half. Kyle Finnegan is a name that I was interested in last year for the Reds to look at. He's also a free agent. Any names jump out to you from that list?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably looking a little more at the dark horse kind of guys for the Reds. And Craig, I'll correct you. I'm not doing a show going through relievers for free. I'm not doing that. Like, I could have done 6 shows last year and I probably never would have mentioned the name Scott Barlow. Like, he didn't even finish the year like on a big league roster. Like, trying to figure out what relievers make sense for the Reds, it's legitimately like a needle in a haystack. So we'll do the shows talking about the outfielders that make sense, the DH, the first basemen that make sense. If someone else wants to tackle the relievers, by all means, more power to you. I am not even thinking about that.
Lucas Sims, a free agent too, Nick, in his negative
my guy
0.8
Lucas,
WAR.
he had a tough year. He had a tough year.
Maybe
He's
needs
probably
a
going to go join Nick
resurgence.
Senzel out in Mexico.
God. Oh man. All right. Final thoughts on the bullpen, Nick.
No, it's a little more dire than I thought. I mean, you are going to probably, no matter what they do, I mean, you're going to be putting a lot of weight on that Santion, Ashcraft, Phillips, Maxwell, May, and then Maxwell and May too. I mean, May had kind of a disappointing year. Maxwell, it's hard to really evaluate their years because they weren't terrible, but we did have a lot of high expectations for both of them coming into the year. I think that I said, I hope that just one of those two would hit and kind of be a dominant reliever. We didn't really get that, but they also didn't fall off the map either. Both those guys certainly still have all the talent in the world to be a closer too. But they haven't shown nearly enough to where you feel comfortable about that. But it can flip quickly for these guys. Relievers are a different breed. I mean, there are like Luke Weaver is the best example. I mean, this guy was atrocious for us all year and was the best reliever in baseball in 2024. So, yeah, that's kind of I guess those two guys. I certainly am optimistic, but you just never know how they're going to pan out.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for our look into the depth chart for 2026 as it sits for the Reds. As a reminder, coming out soon, date to be determined, but sooner than later, Nick and I will be back to do a breakdown of free agency and what the Reds might look to do in 2026 heading into the season in the free agent market. We'll also be doing some more detailed position group breakdowns. And as always, Chatterbox Reds is your home for all breaking news and rumors. We'll be sure to either go live or get a podcast out as soon as we can anytime rumors and news break. So make sure you are clicking the subscribe button, following us on all social media platforms at CBox Sports. Give this video a like for us. Make sure that more people can see it. We certainly appreciate you tuning in. For Nick Kirby, I'm Craig Sandlin. This has been Chatterbox Reds. Until next time, everybody, have a good one.